The city of Chicago lay cloaked in the silent embrace of a relentless winter. Snowflakes danced gracefully in the frigid air, blanketing the streets in a pristine layer of white. Amidst the towering skyscrapers and bustling avenues, a young girl navigated the icy sidewalks with cautious steps. Her name was Lena Johnson, a 12-year-old African-American orphan whose life had been marred by tragedy and hardship. Lena's ebony skin contrasted sharply against the snowy landscape, her small frame bundled tightly in a worn coat that barely kept the biting cold at bay. Her curly hair, often tangled from nights spent in abandoned buildings, framed her expressive brown eyes that held stories of sorrow, resilience, and an unyielding hope for a brighter future. Despite the harshness of her existence, Lena possessed a heart full of compassion and a spirit that refused to be broken. Every day, Lena faced the harsh realities of life on the street. She scavenged for discarded food, dodged the indifferent gaze of passers-by, and sought temporary shelter wherever she could find it. Her nights were spent huddled under bridges or in abandoned storefronts, the cold seeping into her bones, reminding her of the warmth she yearned for but could not find. Lena's parents had been her anchor, her source of love and security. Their untimely deaths in a tragic accident, when she was just 10, had left her adrift in a world that offered little mercy. The absence of their love and guidance weighed heavily on her young shoulders, fueling her longing for a family and a place to call home. She dreamt of a life filled with laughter, shared meals, and the comfort of knowing she belonged somewhere. Miles away, in a luxurious penthouse overlooking the Chicago skyline, Margaret Thompson grappled with her own demons. Once the charismatic CEO of Thompson Fashion House, Margaret had been a trailblazer in the fashion industry, her name synonymous with elegance and innovation. Her rise to success was meteoric, driven by an unwavering ambition and an insatiable desire to excel. However, Margaret's relentless pursuit of her career had come at a steep cost. Her dedication had left little room for her personal life, and the bonds with her children, Daniel, Sarah, and Michael, had grown strained over the years. Daniel, her eldest, had admired her strength and determination, but as he grew older, the distance between them widened. Sarah and Michael, her younger children, had felt increasingly neglected, yearning for the maternal affection that had been overshadowed by their mother's demanding work schedule. The turning point came during a particularly grueling fashion season. Margaret was preparing for a high-profile show in Paris, a milestone event that could elevate her brand to new heights. Amidst the chaos of last-minute preparations and the pressure to deliver perfection, she missed Daniel's graduation ceremony back in Chicago. The disappointment in Daniel's eyes as he watched his mother absent from the celebration was a painful sight that Margaret couldn't ignore. "Mom, you promised you'd be there. Again, you chose work over us." Daniel's voice quivered with a mix of hurt and anger. Margaret, overwhelmed by the demands of her position, struggled to respond. "Daniel, I had no choice. The success of the company depends on these events. You have to understand." But Daniel couldn't comprehend how his mother could prioritize her career over their family. The confrontation left a deep scar, and soon after, Margaret found herself alone in her opulent penthouse, the walls echoing with the emptiness of her achievements. The accolades, the wealth, and the recognition felt hollow without the love and connection of her family. As time passed, Margaret's loneliness deepened. She turned to alcohol and extramarital relationships in an attempt to fill the void left by her children's absence. The once vibrant and driven woman began to lose herself in a cycle of despair and regret, grappling with the consequences of her choices. One frigid evening, as Lena made her way through the deserted streets of Chicago, she noticed an unusual sight. Through the swirling snowflakes, she glimpsed a solitary figure struggling against the wind. A woman in an expensive coat, her silver hair whipping wildly around her face. Something about the woman's posture spoke of desperation, a silent plea for help that resonated deeply within Lena. Without hesitation, Lena approached cautiously. "Are you okay?" she called out over the howling wind. The woman looked up, her eyes meeting Lena's. For a moment, there was only silence, the storm's fury encapsulating them in a fragile bubble. Then, with a shaky breath, the woman nodded. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion. But Lena could sense the desperation beneath her calm facade. "You don't look fine. Come with me. We need to find shelter before the storm gets worse." The woman hesitated, glancing around as if searching for an escape route. I don't know where to go," she admitted, her voice cracking with vulnerability. Lena placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'll help you. There's a place nearby where we can wait it out." Guided by instinct and a deep-seated need to protect, Lena led the woman through the maze of snow-laden streets. The wind howled louder, and snowflakes began to fall in earnest, each one a tiny dagger against exposed skin. Their breaths formed visible puffs in the frigid air as they navigated the slippery sidewalks, seeking refuge from the relentless storm. After what felt like an eternity, battling the elements, they arrived at an old, abandoned building. Its windows were boarded up, and the door hung precariously on its hinges, but it offered some semblance of shelter. Lena quickly scanned the area, ensuring it was safe before guiding the woman inside. Inside, the interior was dimly lit, shadows dancing on the walls, as the wind whipped through the cracks. Lena found a corner where they could sit relatively dry, pulling her thin, worn coat tighter around both of them. She rummaged through her small stash of belongings, pulling out a worn blanket and draping it over the woman's shoulders. "Thank you," the woman whispered, her voice tinged with gratitude and relief. Lena offered a small, genuine smile. "It's nothing. We need to stay warm." As the storm raged outside, the two women sat in silence, the only sounds the howling wind and the occasional creak of the old building settling into the night. Lena glanced at Margaret, noting the lines etched deep into her face and the fatigue in her eyes. There was a story there, one of loss and longing, not unlike her own. "What's your name?" Lena asked softly, breaking the silence. The woman sighed, her gaze distant. "Margaret Thompson. Lena," she replied simply. "Lena Johnson." Margaret looked at Lena, studying her with a mixture of curiosity and appreciation. "You're very brave, you know. Not many would offer help to a stranger tonight." Lena shrugged, though she wished she could claim otherwise. "I just couldn't leave you out there." Margaret reached out, placing a hand over Lena's. "Thank you, sweetheart. You've given me more than you know." As the hours passed, Lena shared snippets of her story, how she had lost her parents, the nights spent seeking shelter, and the constant struggle to survive. Margaret listened intently, her own burdens momentarily lifted by Lena's presence. "You're stronger than you know, Lena," Margaret said softly. "Life may have dealt you a tough hand, but you have a heart that shines brightly, even in the darkest times." Lena looked up, her eyes meeting Margaret's. "Sometimes I feel like there's no light left for me." Margaret squeezed her hand gently. "There is always light, even if it's hard to see. Sometimes it takes someone else to help us find it again." The storm began to wane, the fury of the night giving way to a tentative calm. Lena and Margaret remained by each other's side, a silent bond forming between them. As dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange, the remnants of the storm lay scattered across the city, a testament to its temporary but fierce presence. Margaret stood slowly, her movements unsteady but determined. "I think we can make it through this morning." Lena nodded, feeling a newfound sense of hope stirring within her. "Yes, we can." Together they stepped out of the abandoned building, the sun's first rays casting a warm glow on their faces. The city, though battered by the storm, began to awaken once more. People emerged from their homes, assessing the damage and aiding those in need. It was in this moment of shared resilience that Lena realized the impact of her actions. How a simple act of kindness could ripple outward, creating connections, and fostering hope. Days turned into weeks, and Lena and Margaret's relationship deepened. Margaret began to open up about her past, the sacrifices she had made for her career, the loneliness that came with her success, and the deep-seated regret for neglecting her children. Lena listened with empathy, her own experiences on the streets allowing her to understand Margaret's pain. "I abandoned my children for my career," Margaret confessed one evening as they sat in the corner of the community center. "I thought success would bring them everything they needed, but all it did was create distance and pain." Lena nodded, her heart aching for both herself and Margaret. "It's never too late to make things right. I believe you can reconnect with your children." Determined to help, Lena and Margaret began the arduous task of reaching out to Margaret's estranged family. They faced numerous obstacles: suspicion, resentment, and the emotional weight of past wounds. But Lena's perseverance and Margaret's genuine remorse slowly began to break down the barriers. Through countless meetings, heartfelt conversations, and moments of vulnerability, Margaret's children started to see the change in their mother. The shared struggles and the bond they formed with Lena created a foundation for healing and reconciliation. Throughout this journey, Lena's deepest desire was to find a place she could call home, a family that would love and support her. Her experiences with Margaret ignited a hope that she had long buried, a hope that she could build a family of her own, even if it meant forging new connections and redefining what family meant to her. Lena's nights were filled with dreams of a warm home, shared meals, and the laughter of siblings. She envisioned herself in a room filled with light, her own bed beside a bed that wasn't hers. Beds that belonged to children who were just like her, yearning for love and belonging. Margaret, inspired by Lena's resilience and kindness, began to use her resources to support the mentorship program, creating opportunities for Lena and others like her to find stability and belonging. Together, they worked towards creating a community where everyone had the chance to find their own version of a family and a home. Margaret's first step towards reconnecting with her children was a heartfelt letter to Daniel, expressing her remorse and desire to rebuild their relationship. Lena helped her draft the letter, ensuring that every word conveyed Margaret's genuine regret and longing for forgiveness. When the letter was finally answered, Margaret's heart raced as she read Daniel's thoughtful reply. "Dear Mother, thank you for reaching out. It's been a long time, and there's a lot to process. But I'm willing to give us a chance to reconnect. Let's meet and talk." Sincerely, Daniel Thompson. Margaret's eyes welled with tears of relief and gratitude. "We did it, Lena." He agreed to meet. Lena smiled, her heart swelling with pride for her friend. "I knew you could do it." The meeting was arranged for the following month, giving Margaret and Lena time to prepare emotionally and mentally. As they navigated the complexities of their evolving relationship, Lena found herself drawing strength from Margaret's determination to make amends, her unwavering support serving as a beacon of hope in both their lives. The day of the meeting arrived, bringing with it a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Margaret had traveled to Chicago with Lena by her side, the city where her children now resided. The reunion was set to take place at a local cafe, a neutral and comfortable setting where they could talk openly. As they approached the cafe, Margaret's heart pounded in her chest. Lena noticed her friend's unease and offered a reassuring squeeze of her hand. "You're ready for this, Margaret. Just be yourself." Margaret took a deep breath, summoning the courage to face the man who had become a stranger in her life. They entered the cafe, the familiar scent of coffee and pastries enveloping them. Lena spotted Daniel immediately, now an adult with a presence that reflected both strength and vulnerability. Margaret stood up, her heart racing as she approached the table where Daniel sat with his family. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions, the air thick with anticipation. "Daniel," Margaret began softly, her voice wavering slightly. "It's been a long time." Daniel looked up, his eyes meeting his mother's with a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. "Mother," he replied, his tone guarded but not unkind. "Thank you for reaching out." They sat down, the conversation initially tentative, each word carefully chosen to bridge the gap that had formed over the years. Lena observed from a nearby table, her presence a quiet support for Margaret as she navigated the delicate terrain of reconciliation. As the hours passed, the barriers between them began to dissolve, replaced by a shared desire to heal and rebuild what had been lost. Margaret expressed her remorse for her past absence, acknowledging the pain her children had endured. Daniel, in turn, shared his own struggles growing up without a mother's presence, the longing for connection that had shaped his life. By the end of the meeting, a fragile but hopeful understanding had been established. They agreed to take small steps towards rebuilding their relationship, recognizing that forgiveness and trust would take time to cultivate. Margaret left the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose, the seeds of reconciliation planted and nurtured by the unwavering support of Lena. With the initial hurdle of meeting Daniel behind them, Margaret began to reach out to her younger children, Sarah and Michael. Each conversation was a step toward healing, a process that required patience, understanding, and genuine effort to rebuild trust. Sarah, now 16, was the most hesitant of the siblings. Her teenage years had been filled with anger and resentment, her heart aching for the mother she had lost. Michael, 10, was more open, his innocent eyes yearning for the love he had been denied. Lena played a crucial role in these reunions, acting as a mediator and source of support for both Margaret and her children. Her own experiences of loss and longing made her uniquely empathetic, allowing her to bridge the emotional gaps between them. One sunny afternoon, Lena, Margaret, and the Thompson family gathered at Sarah and Michael's home. The atmosphere was tense yet hopeful as they embarked on the journey of rebuilding their family bonds. "Mom," Sarah began, her voice soft but filled with emotion, "why did you leave us?" Margaret took a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, I made a terrible mistake. My career consumed me, and I neglected the most important part of my life, my family. I am so sorry for the pain I caused you and Michael." Michael reached out, placing a hand on Margaret's knee. "It's okay, Mom. We're just glad you're here now." The simplicity and sincerity of Michael's gesture melted the remnants of Margaret's guilt, fostering a sense of hope that perhaps their family could heal. As weeks turned into months, the Thompson family began to heal. Margaret made a conscious effort to be present in her children's lives, attending school events, helping with homework, and spending quality time together. The bond that had been broken by years of absence was slowly mending, nurtured by genuine love and understanding. Touched by Lena's kindness and innocence, Mrs. Thompson adopted her, and her dreams of going to school and having a family became a miracle in the midst of a busy life.